Some say these two trainers were quietly in the shadows. Robert Weatherwax, last of the Legendary Lassie trainers, from the world's greatest movie dog training family, was quietly hidden in his TV work. And Christophe Clugston, elite Action K9 trainer, was traveling from the sub-zero Arctic to the sweltering jungle heat, training dogs on 3 continents. But a chance meeting changed all of that. Now, Robert and Christophe have joined forces and they're breaking the silence. For the first time, the secretive and hidden world of the movie dog trainer and the science of the elite tactical trainer will be revealed. That's right, they are out of the shadows. Welcome to Tactical Practical.
Okay everyone, I'm Christophe Clugston and I'm with Robert Weatherwax as usual. So we're going to be talking about a tool that's really important, and it could be practical or it could be tactical or it could be tactical and practical. We'll let you decide, but we'll make our decisions. But we're going to talk about this, and it's something you may not be aware of. In fact, Robert wrote a whole chapter on it, and he's well versed in describing what this tool is. We're going to let him do that, but I want to tell everyone ahead of time that stick around to the end, because there's something important that I will be talking about at the very end that people have sent me messages about ever since I mentioned that I'm going to be working with Robert. And so I won't answer that up front. I'll answer that near the very end. So stick around until that time. But anyway, Robert, you want to tell us about what this secret weapon of yours is that you like to use?
Yeah. In my book, I talk about the fact that I look at dog training like school, like grade school. You can't go from elementary school straight to college. There has to be something in between to stem the tide to get you from point A to point C, and that point B is the long leash. So what I typically do is I use a 50-foot leash. That's pretty much my standard. I used to carry a 15 and a 30 and a 50, but I find that it's much easier to shorten up my 50-foot leash than to have to keep putting leashes on and off the dog based on what I want to accomplish and how much distance I wanted. So the whole reason of using a 50-foot leash is to establish distance, because distance is everything. I mentioned in my book that William Briscoe even quotes it in my book, another established trainer, says that, what's the first thing you want to do with your dog? You want to get them away from you. So you don't want them to be dependent on being close to you in order for them to be responsive to your command. So I'll use a long leash to give me that sense of control. I'll typically put a knot in the end of my leash, because when I order them, they typically come without a knot. I put a knot on the end, and that kind of tells me where the dog needs to be. So I'll take that knot, I'll put it in front of where the dog is, and then I'll have the rest of the leash just strewn about on the ground, not touching it. So that way I know if the dog runs or breaks their stay for whatever reason, I'm not going for the dog. I'm not going to chase the dog. I'm just going to go for the end of the leash. They're going to hit a dead end, and I'm going to bring them back to the spot where they're supposed to be. I'm not going to be upset about it. I'm just going to do it calmly and like it's no big deal. And then when they get back on the mark, then we're back on the same wavelength, and I'm starting to communicate again with the dog. So basically, I don't use a lot of negative reinforcement of anything. I just kind of disregard the bad part and then go straight into what I really wanted them to do in the first place. And I just keep repeating that until they see the futility in breaking that mark, that place where they're supposed to stay.
You were talking about the leash, and I've seen video of you working with dogs, and one of the big keys that a lot of people do is they tend to have the leash where the dog can see it. And I noticed that you, like a great trainer would do, you put that leash where the dog cannot see it. And you want to explain why that is?
Yeah, because I don't want to be able to telegraph anything with the dog. I don't want them to start finding patterns in what I'm doing. So the less that I show the dog, the more mystery that the dog has, the better they're going to respond, because they don't actually know where the correction is coming from, when it's going to come, what angle it's going to come from. And that to me is important, because training is a poker game. I never want the dog to see what hand I have.
Yeah, you want to appear to be omnipotent, don't you? I mean, you want to be all powerful, and the dog
And mystical,
doesn't.
almost. Yeah.
Yeah. The dog doesn't know when you have control and when you don't have control. That's a big secret to dog training that we're let out. But it's something I want to go back to that Robert said that a lot of people are not going to didn't pick up on. I guarantee they didn't pick up on it. And this is something that's huge. One of the things that I've tried to underline and emphasize in any videos that where I'm talking, and that is distance. One of the things that attracted me to Robert's book. By the way, I have a review of Robert's book. You can find it on this YouTube channel. Give that a look. So one of the things that attracted me to the book right away is when in Robert's book he says, "Distance is everything." And I'm paraphrasing, it doesn't matter about what's up close. Yeah, exactly. This is the difference between a movie dog trainer, TV trainer, and a tactical trainer with all the sports, obedience, and pet dog people. Because all the sport obedience people, they're all concerned with the dog, like really right next to them, looking at them all the time. With the Schutzen IGP, it's called now, with the face up in the air, staring at them. The dog can walk into a hole and disappear. It's not tactical. It's not practical. It's hard on the dog. If you talk to a dog chiropractic guy, which there are, say that's not a good thing for the dog to do for long term. I read this in his book. I was like, oh. Finally, somebody is actually talking about it. There's some sport gun dog guys who talk about it, but besides that, nobody's talking about this. And maybe you can go into that a little bit more detail, because you can tell us from the movie dog point of view about the dog doing everything that you need this leash, that you would use this leash for to begin with. I mean, what were the applications of this leash? Now, see, we're going to practical. We're practical here. What were the applications of this 50-foot leash for the movie work?
Well, for A to Bs, mostly where a dog has to travel from one place to another. When we were doing stuff on live shows, obviously it's not practical to use a 50-foot leash, so we would be using what I call a transit leash, which is your regular 5-foot leash that most trainers think is a training leash for everything.
Right.
I use that in places that are too tight to work with a long leash. Now, keep in mind too, when I'm on a set, I have different marks that I could use. I could use the couch as a mark. I could have the dog come down the stairs, get on the couch, and that mark, in essence, the couch becomes the destination. But when you teach a dog to do an A to B like that, you always have to do the second part of it first, so that they know where they're going to end up, and then you do it backwards. So the rest of the journey is just to get to the spot where they have to make a decision whether they're going to get on a mark or on the floor, on the couch, wherever it may be. And they've already learned that at the very beginning, and then we connect the rest of the journey from where they begin to that point.
Right, and yeah, in operant conditioning terms, that's called backward chaining. You start with the goal, and then you work backwards from the goal. So the dog or the animal, whatever animal, especially with rats, I trained rats to do things for my behavioral degree I have, and you have to start with the end behavior. So you teach them that last behavior first, and then you build on that so that they already know where they're going. It's not how people would do it. Most people would do it trying to learn things. They go the first step, and then the second step, and the third step, but then they get lost because they'll forget a step. But when you learn the last thing, your goal first, then you never get lost on it, because you know that's the thing that's been reinforced the most, the thing that you know the best, actually. So I mean that.
So when they get lost, they'll naturally go to that spot. To
the couch in this case that you were saying, and just, I mean, this is a little bit off of a tangent, but I think it's important because Robert and I talk about things, and we know what each other are talking about, but we can't assume that everybody who's listening will. So, Robert, could you explain what a mark is to the people that don't know?
A mark is simply a target, a spot for the dog to see that's fairly different from everything else around him. So, for example, a mark can be anything you want it to be. Outside, it could be a patch of grass. It could be the edge of a sidewalk, the edge of a curb. Indoors, it could be a certain doormat, maybe. Maybe it's a doormat. Maybe it's a particular cushion on a couch. But we're teaching them this is a target, a place where we want you to stay until further notice. That's all we're going to do is condition them on that mark. And it always starts out as a large mark, and then we can actually make it smaller. So when I'm working on a movie set, I can get that down to something as small as a nickel.
But what we're talking about is that we train actual marks. We do it in other things. People do it for agility training too. For agility dogs, they'll train. It's actually, we have things that we move around to use as a target. It could be like he's saying. A lot of people use the car mats that go in the car and then cut them and use parts of them square and stuff like that. Giving out some secrets here, people. And but if you want to know the actual process and stuff, that's something we can cover. And I should mention that, by the way, because we do offer workshops, clinics, seminars, consultations, virtual training, and of course, and I need to throw this in there. I mean, yes, Robert has a book, but Robert is also available for personal training. He's in East Texas, so if you happen to be in East Texas area and you want him to help you with your dog, contact us, and we'll get you to Robert. And I'm injured at present, and I'm not training anybody's dog right now. And I'm north of him in the Tulsa, Oklahoma metro area. Anyway, I just throw that out there because I want people to know that we are personally available to help people. We're talking about things that no one else is talking about, but we're also there to give the application. Now, one of the things I think that is impressive to Robert. It's just something he's done for I don't know what, nearly 200 years, right? I mean, you're like
not that long, but pretty long.
You think we're in the daylight? We're really vampires, and these are green screens. So you don't see us in the daytime that much. But anyway, the thing is the go with or the come with, I think is very important. And that was where this leash was also used, correctly? Right? That's
because it allows the dog to make a mistake. If you have a short leash and the dog drifts off to the right or the left, in a direction you don't want him to go, you can correct them with the long leash without having to make any changes in what you're doing. You simply bring the dog back to you. Basically, when you're doing a go with, the person who the dog's going with is the one who applies the correction, and I'll be applying the command, which is just go with them, right? And then they'll take off, and then I'll have the person who has the leash, I'll make them have a series of turns, maybe a sharp left, maybe a turn into the dog, or a turn away from the dog. And of course, when I say go with, it's simultaneous with the correction. So what they learn is they learn to stay with this other person based on my command, but their correction.
There's a couple things. We probably need to explain exactly what that is, because, okay, if you're watching a movie and you see the dog and you're watching
Wizard of Oz is a perfect example. The Wizard of Oz is a perfect example, because you see Toto on the yellow brick road, and there's no place for my great uncle Jack to be. So a lot of times he would either be behind a tree, but if it was in wide and after, sometimes he would have to be in the tree, right? So he'd put his arm in a branch, and his face would be looking through a hole, and he'd have a little place where he could say, "Go with them, Terry, go with them." That was Terry's name. Terry,
the real dog.
Exactly.
The real.
And of course, it looks fantastic because the dog doesn't look like he's going with them because he's trained to go with them. He looks like he's going with them because he wants to be there.
Yeah, natural.
That's what motivational training is all about: getting a dog to want to do something as opposed to forcing them to do it against them.
Yeah. Right. That's where I was going. And the other thing I wanted to say, okay, sort of explain the go with or come with. I've heard people use both terms. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's the end result that's important. But the thing is, one, as Carl Miller would say, it's our nexus, is a famous trainer, and this was to make the dog look natural, right? That was the biggest thing you're trying to do. And people look at TV work or movie work, and the dog looks natural, and they think, oh, that's no big deal. No, that's a huge deal. That's a massive deal. And I don't know. I'm going to ask this question to you. Do you use that same thing when you're doing training the owners with their dogs? Do you do like a handoff with this? I mean, do you start out with the dog for this and then hand it off to them and have them do this more or less the same way? You know, I mean, like the go with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what people are wanting to do. I want to get the leash into their hand as quickly as I can. I want them to understand what they're doing before they do it. I don't want to give a leash to somebody and they have questions as to when they're supposed to correct, why, and how. And so what I do is I make it very clear in what I'm doing, and I explain everything I'm doing as I do it. So when they start it, it's just like all they're doing is replaying what I showed them. And
right.
If they have anything that they're doing a little incorrectly, I'll just give them a slight adjustment, and then we'll continue. So I want them to have confidence, because the confidence that the owner has with their dog means everything.
Did I say believe in your dog, believe in yourself? And you've got to believe in your dog. You got to believe that your dog can do it. And for example, you know, I have the quarter-mile sit-stay, quarter-mile recall, which is nothing for that dog. And some people think, oh, that's, you know, it's amazing. Well, yeah, it's better than anybody. It's better than anybody on YouTube that's put stuff up, but it's not. The dog can do far more than that. But it starts with the belief that the dog can do it. I mean, and I have to believe in my dog. I mean, when that truck passes inches from my dog, yeah, I'm watching, but I'm worried about the truck. I'm not worried about the dog. I mean, I know he's going to hold that position. And what I want to say is that the 50-foot leash, I have different links. I use a 50-foot leash. I have on mine some biothane, which is what tactical we all use, because it's if it gets wet, it doesn't change it at all. It can go through. It doesn't tangle. It doesn't get knotted up. It's It's much stronger than other material. Easy to clean, and it's lighter than some. It's not as light as some cords that you could get. And that's what I want to say, that other people who are using this sort of, you'll find 20-foot ones pretty common too. 20-foot, and they'll be called different names, like the lounge cord, or the long line, or check cord. You'll hear that with bird dog trainers, because they want to teach the dog to be out in front of them and go back and forth. That's quartering, or casting, it's called. If you tell the dog go to the left, which is a whole process, the dog will go to the left, you tell them to go to the right, the dog will go to the right, because they're looking for whatever birds, you know, grouse or whatever, and to flush. Right. And this, but the point is, all of this is done at a distance. It's not the dog right next to you doing something. That's not impressive to me. Like when I see people do end of the leash recalls, 6 feet. Are you kidding me? That's meaningless. I mean, that doesn't mean anything to me. Nothing. I mean, what is, you know? I mean, I have my puppy. I can do 50. That's what I. By the way, that's what I use. Let's talk about that. The recall. I mean, since we're talking about the quarter-mile recall, my puppy now, but he was doing it at 6 months. I had him on. He was doing recalls on a 50-foot leash. I mean, that's what I was using it for. He get out to the end. I use whistles a lot, and we'll have an episode about that sort of stuff. But anyway,
yeah, it's basically just taking a little bit of momentum, because what most people do when their dog runs away is they chase the dog. Well, that's exactly what the dog wants, because now it becomes a game of keep away, and they're running away, and they're going to get a big kick out of this. You're looking like a fool, and all your neighbors are laughing at you.
So you're slow.
That's right. So what I do is, I'll take the end of that leash where I'm not dragging the dog. I'm just taking off. And before I could even get to the end of that 50-foot leash, he wants to join me. He or she wants to join me, because she's like, "Oh, where are you going? I want to go there. I want to see what you're doing." Right? So now, instead of, you know, them controlling you, you're controlling them, and that's, to me, the way to get them excited about the beginning of recall, because in the beginning, they're not going to want to do what you want. It's not going to be fun for them. But once you make it fun and you know, there's a good reward at the end and there's a little bit of excitement in getting it to happen, that changes the whole way that the dog looks at work.
Let me add some more tactical uses of the 50-foot leash. Of course, tracking dogs or trailing dogs, there's two different things. It's air scent or ground scent. The 40-foot and the 50-foot leash is pretty common in those cases because the dog is going to get ahead of a human because they just, even moving slowly, they move faster than people do. So it's useful there. It's also for sled dogs, of course. This is a part of that. You have to get the dog to be able, as we would say in sled dog, hike, which is to go out from you, forward, to get away from you. And also there's one now, they've made these bicycles. They're not really bicycles. They're sort of like a scooter looking thing, kind of, but they're bigger. And the dogs pull people on these things. And one of my friends in the Netherlands, she wants to get into this. It's not cheap, but the bikes aren't cheap. But anyway, the thing is, though, that what Robert said initially was like, I want the dog away from me. Or you're saying that your buddy did, William, right?
Yeah, William.
Yeah. He's saying, then that's what we want. The dog has to learn to move out from us. Like people, when I'm in the park with my dog, I don't do the stormtrooper sort of obedience heel with my jungle dog at all. I mean, he's not there looking at me and he's 6 inches away from me. No, he's doing whatever because he's a tracking dog. But when I tell him to freeze, he's freezing, and then I tell him to hike, he moves out and away from me. That's something you don't see. I mean, that's not common, you know. And people are like, "Wait, what's that dog do?" You know, I usually have a vest on him. It says, but the point is that we're giving out little pointers here and there. You need to replay this, but this whole thing about distance and getting the dog away from you is a big key to why we're able to do things that you don't see other people doing. This starts early with us too, doesn't it? I mean, you start this out pretty early. Like if you had a puppy, you're not freaking out like the dog's right not next to me. I mean, you're not doing that.
No, because I mean, the personality development is important, and I believe that when you put too much pressure on a young dog, you actually break their spirit a little bit.
Yeah.
And I feel like it should be very positive, especially with young dogs, puppies. I work with a lot of puppies, and I don't train them the way I train adult dogs. I give them a lot more leeway than I give an adult dog.
Yeah, and it
another
also.
thing I want to mention. Another thing I want to mention about the jump starting the recall. Part of the recall is to segue into heel. So when I call the dog to me, I typically receive them on the side I want them to walk. So when I call the dog to me, they're already on the correct side when I begin walking. I don't want them, on the wrong side, and then I, have to pull them back around. And if I decide this is the side I want them on, and keep in mind it's interchangeable. I could do it left, I can do it right, I can do it in front, behind me.
Correct.
It doesn't really matter. I just go with whatever, with my clients, with my private training, I go with whatever they'd like to do. I ask them, listen, what side do you want this dog, what side do you walk your dog on? And then they tell me, and then we teach it that way.
Yeah, that's a good thing to bring up, and that's something. If you watch my quarter mile thing, you'll see. I actually have some subtitles on there saying, "Watch, look, the dog goes. I give him a signal which side I want him to go to. He'll go left, right, or center, actually." And with all tactical dogs, all my dogs can do that. What's happened is most people have the dog stop in front of them, sit in front of them, because this came from sport obedience training, and also some duck retrievers. They wanted them to have the duck in their mouth and sit in front of them so they could take
the dog. Wouldn't the dog be in your way if you were walking?
Yes.
The dog would be in your way.
Right. It's not tactical. Why have the dog running full speed at you and then have to slow down, stop right there, and then sit down and then go to the side? I mean, what's that about? Yeah, people like the way. I mean, there's a lot that's called the finish. You can have you can see me doing a bunch of, even my bulldog, he does Russo. She was a famous trainer. She's died, but famous trainer, and she had the Russo pop, and I can have my 110-pound bulldog can do the Russo finish. But my point being, it's more practical and more tactical to have the dog come in and go to the side that you want the dog to go, because he can run past like sliding into home base, and then he can turn himself around and be ready. And there's no reason to be sitting down. I mean, that's another kind of thing. But you and I are both big on that. Why are you having the dog sit all the time? I mean,
you've lost all the momentum that you wanted in the process of calling them to you. You had momentum, you stop it, and then you have to restart it again.
Right. And also, and for movie dog training, it's unnatural. Dogs don't do that. So
right.
you don't want that sit, because it just looks retarded. I mean that, if you're moving along, the dog sits every time. They call it the automatic sit, and these pet dog trainers have picked up on that. In fact, Blanche Saunders, who's the person who started all of the AKC sport obedience stuff way back, she was upset that she did that, because she said she wrote that one of the things that she would remove would be that sit, because it's not natural for the dog, and it does, like you said, it stops their momentum. It stops them all the time. Instead of being ready to move, ready to change directions, ready to react quickly, they're always concerned with sitting down, and there's really no reason. There's really no reason. The dog wants to sit, okay, let the dog sit. And as a pet dog trainer, why?
Right.
You shouldn't be doing it. And as a tactical trainer, I don't want the dog sitting. I want the dog able to take off, move, to go whatever direction the dog needs to go, or go with me, or to get into a crawl. Drop down and crawl if we have to. But so there's a lot of
it makes this. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's good.
It makes the everything look mechanical, and the fact of the matter is, it's a restart. It's a restart, and why restart the dog when they're already in the perfect position to continue with
Right. The next move. In fact, some people, talking about the signal for the recall, they'll actually use heel. They use the same word that they, whatever they use for heel, if the dog's away, because the dog will come to that side, like you're saying, that they've been trained to
be in that heel zone.
Yeah. And so they see it as one, just, okay, I want the dog to heel, the dog's away from me, but I want him to heel. So that's one of the ways. Some tactical guys do this, by the way. One of the big signals, that's a real old tactical one, is out to the side with your arm and slap your thigh. You've probably seen that. That's an old tactical
Whether
thing
I
to get
do it or not, that's a question. But I've seen it.
Yeah. No, everybody has different. Your signals and my signals are different. We are definitely arm body motion guys. I am more than voice. I don't use voice that much at all. And that's a whole nother episode. But what I'm saying is that people should be able to understand that this 50-foot leash is really the key to a lot of other training, a lot of other controlling other behavior, but also a mindset. And that mindset is that we want the dog to be away from us, but we want that dog to think that we have control out there. And the way that we start out by having control, and that 50-foot leash is what gives us the ability to have control when the dog is out further. And then we'll start to slowly fade it out. Depends on the dog, of course, too. Every dog is different in their learning curve. But this is something that you won't find a lot of people delving into it at this level that we're exploring right now. And that's something that we're trying to bring to you. What else do you think that we should add there?
Well, I get a lot of people when I start training their dog, and I'll put them on a mark, which is typically the first thing they'll do, because I want to teach them the concept of stay. I'm not teaching positions, right? So they'll ask me, well, how come you didn't make them sit? I said, well, what does stay have to do with sit? Well,
right.
I don't know. It doesn't have anything to do with sit, but if you teach them a mark and they're in one place, when you do teach them sit and lie down, they're not going to be moving all around over here, and you got to bring them back. They already learned the mark, so they're going to be in one place. So now you can teach all the positional things that you want to teach the dog, like sit and lie down, head down on your side. All that stuff starts with them learning how to stay, right?
Yeah, I think, and sometimes it helps better to rename it because the stay has been corrupted. Like Robert and I were talking about this the other day with each other, and I like the term remain because you just want the dog to remain there. It's not about the sit and stay, or the down and the stay, or the stand and the stay. We just want the dog to remain there. Well, it's like if the dog wants to juggle and he stays and he's in that same spot, we don't care. And so that's a different concept. And that what that's liberating to us to train, as he's saying, and it also goes in another thing that's kind of that you found in big cat training, and I won't go into that in this episode, but Robert is hinting to a lot of other things that we do that you'll find movie dog guys do, and tactical guys who are smart doing, and circus guys, circus dog trainers too. There's something they all did that made their training easier for the dog. See, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it easy for the dog. And one of the big keys is the more concrete you can make it for the dog, the better it is. And
the less moving parts too. The less moving parts. To simplify. You don't want to use 5 steps when you can use 3.
Right. Well, and also, and for example, when you were talking about the mark, when the dog can learn this concrete thing that we're using, whatever. Let's just say it's a saucer, a teacup saucer or something you're using as a mark. The dog learns that this means remain. Then you can move this thing all around, and now you're liberated.
You can send them to a mark that's away from you. Right.
That's another place we can go with this. I mean, we really need to talk about its own episode because it's an incredibly liberating technique, or I don't know what to even call it. It's more than a concept. It's more than a technique. It's really a secret, because this is when I said we're breaking the silence. This is one of the big keys to movie dog training, and then some other circus guys do this, and big cat trainers have this too. There's things that they use. It's exactly the same though. This mark, you can call it. There's other terms for it besides mark, but just using the movie term, the mark, it's an X for people. They usually put tape on the floor with an X or a star. Go stand on your mark, or go stand on your X, right? For the camera angle.
Right, actors are very familiar with that term.
Yeah, right. And so and we can. That's something we'll have to have Robert talk about, because what people don't understand about the movie thing, it's everything's playing for a camera, which limits what you can do, where you can be, and how the dog is. It's not just you and the dog, or the actor and the dog doesn't know the actor, probably doesn't know him, right. and he's working with an unknown, a stranger, a weirdo, someone who smells completely different. It has different sounds, and there's all this stuff going on. People don't think about that. You know what I'm saying, Robert? I mean, and one of the things is that the dog could smell you on the set. He could feel more comfortable, won't he? He'd feel more secure with your there. I mean, you're talking about your dog Betty, right? Couldn't work with anybody else partially because of that.
Because she was a very soft dog, so there was a certain way you had to work with her. Every dog's a little bit different. That's another episode, but it's really about determining what kind of dog you're actually training. Because a lot of people go in with the same approach no matter what dog they have, right?
Yeah,
that's not the way you train dogs.
Yeah, we have to do an episode on that, because that's exactly right. And just without going into super detail, you might want to explain to people what you mean by soft. Like a soft dog or a soft trainer.
Soft means that they're very sensitive to verbal commands. Some dogs, you have to raise your voice to get their attention. But other dogs, you literally have to lower their voice to entice them, to want them to work, because such voice can actually turn them around and want them they'll want to get out of there, and they'll just fold up. And I've worked with a lot of soft dogs and gotten them through jobs, because I didn't I worked with what I had, not with what I wanted to have.
Yeah. Yes, and that's Yeah, I mean, and that's why, and that's one of the things that I say quite a bit. There are people who are good trainers, but with only a certain type of dog or only a certain type of dog, sport, or thing, because they get used to that type of training, and they can't train other dogs. And that's why I've called a lot of people out. Like, okay, you think you're a dog trainer? Where's your search and rescue dog? Where's your anti-poaching dog? Where's your protection dog? Where's your sled dog? Where's your trick dog? And I'm not talking border collies or golden retrievers. And I'm getting a little tired of seeing a Malinois. What happens when you got a dog that doesn't respond to toys? What happens when you have a dog that doesn't respond to toys? How do you know? What do you know how to do?
If they don't like food, they don't work for food.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you have to have, and this is one of the things where, just just being upfront with everybody. Movie dog trainers sometimes get handed dogs they don't want to work with, or they get told that you got to work with this type of dog, and they're like, no, this type of dog is so difficult to work with. We can do it with for example, let's talk about Carl Miller. When he did Cujo, he did not want to use a Saint Bernard, but they're like, no, they were adamant about they didn't want to change the dog, and he's like, no, we can use a dog that looks similar but it's not as difficult to work with the Saint Bernards. And they said, no, we want a Saint Bernard, and that gave him hell. I mean, he solved the problem, but it wasn't easy. And
it gave him one of his greatest challenges as a result. But it probably actually, in the long run, it made him a better trainer by having to do that.
Yeah, well, they tied the tails down.
Not a shepherd or something.
Yeah, well, I think he wanted to move it to like a Mastiff or something. I think is what he wanted to use. Similar sizes.
I'm not sure what he actually wanted, but I know Saint Bernard was not what he wanted, right?
Yeah, he didn't want. Yeah,
my grandfather didn't want a collie, to be his first car, but he had one.
But wasn't he looking for German Shepherd at that point in time? Because everybody was on the tail. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody wanted another strong heart, another Rintin Tin.
Yeah,
we don't want to start going into these gray areas with breeds that had been tested in film, But he became a pioneer. Now people think that collies are super smart dogs, but without
rough collies
would be nothing.
Well, let's because that's for me. When I was young, I didn't think there was any other type of collie. I other than the Sheltie, right? I knew the Sheltie, but the rough collie was the collie that I saw. I didn't see border collies. This is before I saw border collies everywhere. But the rough collie was the collie that I saw everywhere, and he didn't want to. From what I understand, he didn't want to use the dog because they thought the dogs they're naturally suspicious because that's what they're supposed to be like. Is there a predator among the sheep or whatever? And so they're going to be.
Right.
Your one dog you guys ended up calling Spook, right? Kind of, but it really fit the. Right. But that was part of the dog's nature, right? That's genetic. That's a genetic feature of a collie, and so Pal is the original and probably the greatest. Was not completely typical of a collie, was he? He
was actually a lot more outgoing than the average collie. The collies that we had after that tended to be a little more, a little softer, quote unquote, softer. Like Ben, they had to coax them a bit. But some dogs, like Pal and later on Hey, they were very resilient. Nothing really bothered them, and that's very rare for a collie. Because collies are very in tune with their environment.
Yeah,
and,
right.
To find a collie that cares very little about their environment is a find. Yeah. But it's rare.
Let me say this before we get to wrapping it up here. Is there anything that we forgot to mention about the 50-foot leash? Is there anything you think that we forgot to talk about there?
No, I don't think so. I just think that we have to. It doesn't really matter that you use a 50-foot leash. It doesn't have to be 50. I tell my clients that 15 is a good starting point, and then when you get more comfortable with handling the leash, because then you can go to 20, 30, 50, even 100, which you use from time to time. It's a comfort level, and I don't want people using leashes that are too much for them to handle, and I don't want people trying to struggle with the leash. I just drag it. That way I don't have to worry about it. In my book, I talk about the The snake, you only worry about the head of the snake. Don't worry about the tail. If the tail is, you're preoccupied with the leash, you're not training your dog. You're training the leash. So just let the leash do what it's going to do, but it will give you that extra opportunity to let the dog go out away from you and then bring them back. It gives them flexibility. It lets them interact with the world naturally, organically.
There's mechanical skills involved in this. If so Robert's talking about having the normal person start to do this, and the normal person has to learn these mechanical skills, and one of them is how to operate really how to operate a leash.
I like to look at the hand as a pulley. It's just a pulley, right? You can lock it,
right,
or you can let it ride, but it's just a pulley where the leash goes through your hand, and then when you want to stop the dog, you close your hand, and when you want to release the dog, you open your hand and say, okay. So you're giving them, opportunities to explore, but also letting them know, okay, that's enough. Now we're back here again. But we have the opportunity to say okay and let them go off and sniff or pee on something or take care of whatever needs they might have.
Yes.
Without you being right behind them. Imagine if you went to the bathroom and there was a guy standing right behind you while you went to the bathroom. How would you feel?
Well, I'll tell you some stories about Southeast Asia off camera, but that's some weirdnesses, and it's cultural differences. The 50-foot leash. Let's give it our tactical, practical outcome here. So, is it tactical? Yes, because it's used for protection dogs. I forgot to mention that. It's used for protection dogs. It's used for tracking, trailing dogs. It's used for, of course, search and rescue dogs. It's used for sporting, hunting dogs, pointers, flushers, and retrievers even, and sled dogs and such. So it's definitely tactical, and then it's practical. Robert's saying for the normal.
It's practical because it allows the trainer, the owner, who I call the trainer because that's what we're trying to do, get them in charge of their dog. It gives them the confidence to leave their dog and to create distance without worrying about the dog running away, right? Or chasing after a squirrel or just not coming or doing anything at all. So it gives you that opportunity to say, yeah, I'm going over here, but I still have control.
So it's practical in all these applications, actually, and so it's got the tactical, practical seal of approval from both of us. But what do you people think? Have you ever used a 50? What's the longest leash any of you have used? You can put that in the comments below. And now I want to get to the thing that I sort of tried to, even though I swore I wasn't going to do it, I almost did it accidentally, and that is. People ask me, can you have Robert tell Lassie stories or about, and there's several, there's 10 Lassies, by the way, people, we'll tell you that. And yes, at every 1,000 subscriber mark, Robert will be telling some Lassie story, but we're not going to just do it, there's got to be a reason. And so I think at every 1,000 subscribers, because we need to grow the channel, we need to expand the channel, so that'll happen that way. So there's what you've been waiting for. I'm answering the people who've asked me, is this the Weatherwax that I don't think I know anybody else with the name that is not a dog oriented. I mean, I think you're pretty certain if you run into a Weatherwax that they've dealt with dogs. I think it'd be strange to find a used car salesman named Weatherwax, for example. But I just throw that out there. But anyway,
well, with me, it's more a matter of which Weatherwax is it, right? Like,
yes, right.
Oh yeah,
right.
That's Robert Weatherwax. But then there's another Robert Weatherwax. Is there not?
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, that's my dad. But
yeah,
we're not junior, senior. We have different middle names, but we are both Robert.
Yeah, well, what I'm getting to is everybody's a dog trainer now. So everyone's
right.
a dog trainer. There's a different vibe with Robert here than with the other Weatherwaxes, and he's slightly different avenue he's gone, and that's what we're going to delve into, and that's why he's representing the pet dog owner and people more than I am. Because that's what he's he has decided to be put his time
more
into.
Of a behaviorist. Yeah, a little bit more of a behaviorist than just a trainer.
Yeah, doing it that way. Now, I mean, you have to have both really to do. I mean, you have to know the dog and stuff. We'll get into that in another episode. But and I'm more see, I'm the guy that's got the quarter-mile recall, sit-stay, the 110-pound autistic American bulldog that can limp. I'm working with a jungle dog, so yeah, I'm all about the action. You know what I'm saying? Let's get it going on.
That kind of distance, by having that kind of distance, you can always go closer to the dog because you've already gone about as far as anybody's ever gone. So shortening it up is easy at that point because you've gone beyond what you need. Right? Yeah, well,
tactically we go further, and my dog can go further, and we're going to be filming that, and got a lot of things planned with that. It's just a question of logistics. The dog can do it. It's just a question of logistics and having enough people that for security reasons, for the dog security reasons, and we'll be doing that. I've been waiting to do that for quite a while, and so everyone can look forward to that because I'm not resting on my laurels. I've challenged everybody, let's see, the 3-dog challenge too, which is not that difficult, but people don't want to do it because they want 3 border collies, they want 3 Malinois, they want 3 German shepherds, they want 3 golden retrievers, they want the 3 easy dogs. No, that's not what that's about. So I bring that up just to delineate the differences that we're bringing to this. We're bringing a bizarre mix because you don't hear movie dog trainers talking, and you don't hear tactical guys who have done other things talking. Everybody just stays in their niche, and we just refuse to stay in our lane, as they say. They want us to stay in.
They don't share their information,
right?
Because they don't want to reveal their secrets, right?
Right, and that's the thing. I mean, we're definitely coming out of the shadows, and we're definitely breaking the silence. And so people stay tuned. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and. Any parting words, Robert, you got for the people?
No, I just I'll have to bring a copy of my book to our next show, and I can show people what it looks like. But it is called Training Your Dog the Weatherwax Way, and you gave it a great review, which is how we met. Right. Because I was so impressed by the fact that he understood that we were coming from the same place when it came to dog training for the most part. That I was impressed, and I felt like I have to do something with this guy because he's the only one who really understands what I'm doing, right?
Yeah. And then it turned out that we have a nexus because one of my mentors, I had two movie dog mentors, and one of them was Carl Miller,
which we have in common,
right? Which is who Robert worked with him and learned a lot from Carl, and that's that's like 5 or 6 episodes right there just on that sort of thing. But where can they get the book, Robert? You didn't tell them where they can get the book.
Oh, you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Walmart, Target, you name it. And there's a lot of independent stores too that you can find it on. If you look at it on Amazon, I think there's a place where you can look at some of the independent retailers that carry it as well.
You can get it autographed too if you put out the effort. If you put out the effort.
I do paw prints for my authentic paw prints from Lassie number 7 that my grandfather gave me paw print, the mold years ago, and I use it to autograph my books along with my own signature, which is not as thrilling as Lassie's paw print.
Well, but still, hey, it's there's something to be said about all that. So anyway,
it goes together.
Yeah, we can't deny it. I mean, this is a fact. Robert comes from the most influential and well-known movie dog training family that's ever been and ever will be, because there aren't dog series like Lassie or Rin Tin Tin like there used to be. I mean, and I don't think we're going to see any in the future. So, hey, that's like. They own it, and you got to recognize. So that's how it goes, people. And anyway, so this has been cool for this episode, and I think we finally got our audio problems worked out and whatever.
But that was a challenge.
Yeah. So anyway, for for this episode of Tactical Practical. Thanks a lot for reviewing, and remember what I said about the Lassie stories. Okay, everybody, remember about that, and then I'll have some stories about tactical dogs that you might find interesting. But okay, people, we'll see you in the next installment. Take care, and remember, believe in your dog and believe in yourself.